On Sunday, in living rooms and sports bars around New England, thousands of devoted fans will watch the Patriots kick off the 2014 season in Miami. My next guest won't be one of them. It's not because he hates football, he loves it, and it's not because he hates the Pats, although he does. Stave Almond won't be tuning in because he's made a moral decision about the sport, which he outlines in his new book, Against Football, One Fan's Reluctant Manifesto. And Stave Almond is here. Seriously, that's it? I mean, I read your whole book. You're a fanatic. You're an Oakland Raiders fan.
Yes.
I mean, I get it. You've been devoted since a little kid. Yep. That's it?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you're the guy who writes the book that's called Against Football, you can't sneak off to the sports bar as much as I would love to. I mean, part of the point of the book is that it's hard for Americans to morally interrogate their pleasures, whether it's tobacco or meat or petroleum or whatever it is. And football was one of the great pleasures of my life. But when I really looked at it morally on a bunch of different bases, it didn't line up with how, for instance, the values that I'd want to instill in my kids. So I have to stand by that.
All right, we're going to lay this out. So you start the book with this great anecdote about this clipping that you've carried with you since 2003 that you got out of the Boston Globe, and it was on your bulletin board, and to pin you all in it, it's about a Patriots and Miami's game, and Kevin Faulk gets injured. And Kevin Faulk says, I wasn't out cold, but I was out. I knew something was wrong with me. I didn't have the same normal feeling when I got up. And then you write this great thing about that passage. You say it was like a linguistic concussion because he was kind of confused about what he was saying, but in fact, he had a concussion.
That's right. That's right. And I originally carried that around, that clipping, because I just thought it was so funny. Yeah, it was funny to me, and I had a sort of ironic distance on it, like, oh, how odd that there's this savage sport that, you know, is so barbaric that the players can't even keep it straight how injured they are. And then I realized over the past couple of years, I realized actually we're the ones who are concussed. It's the fans who have really cut the synapse between, you know, where's the game? Oh my God, I want to watch football. And the part of our brains that's saying it's actually not a good thing. It's not a moral thing to do to consume as a form of entertainment a game that's so savage that the men playing it get brain damage or can get brain damage. So in a sense, we're the ones, I think, as a nation that are kind of morally concussed.
I mean, it's become a national pastime. It's way bigger than baseball in terms of the financials. It is, as you put out, it's savage, it's violent, it's brutal. I mean, maybe not as much as boxing. You know, hockey is right in there. But it is a more intellectual sport, which you also acknowledge, of all of those. So why can't that trump everything else?
Well, I think because it absolutely instills it can instill wonderful values. Hard work, perseverance, discipline, you have to cooperate, teamwork, it's strategically dense. There's no question that there are incredible virtues, and I wanted to write a book that was from the perspective of a fan, not some intellectuals looking down on the game, but somebody who's inside the game looking around saying, what am I actually consuming? And those things are true. But the players who get good, the further and further you go into the sport, and Kevin Faulk's a great example, you have to have a code that's essentially masochistic, that you're willing to risk violence. Wes Welker right now is a guy who could be looking at dementia 20 or 30 years down the road.
Gronkowski could hurt his knee again. He's only been out 6 months with a torn ACL.
Well, and it's one thing after another. When you actually read any account of a football player's life, so much of it is just how battered their bodies is. And the most terrifying thing is that the real danger for brain injuries are these subconcussive hits that aren't even concussions. They don't even register. They're the little car crashes that happen inside people's helmets. A lot of the reason I wrote the book was because I basically had an experience where my mom got an acute dementia, and when I encountered that, walked into the ICU, it was a few days after my third child was born. I flew across the country. We thought she might die, in fact, and it was just so terrifying to see my mom, this powerful intellectual force, reduced to nothing.
All right, as you know, PBS, and they started to do it in conjunction with ESPN, this great documentary series, League of Denial. And the NFL is in denial about this. We've confronted both Bill Belichick and Tom Brady during the time that series was on. And Tom Brady said, I never think about it. And Bill Belichick's answer to our question was, I don't know what show you're talking about. Frontline. He didn't know what show we were talking about. Why is the NFL in such denial about this?
Well, they have to be. ultimately, if a guy like Tom Brady, the code of valor in football is you can't play scared. You can play hurt. They want you to play hurt, but you can't play scared. And so I understand that. Football selects for guys who are especially courageous and brave and heroic. That's the reason we worship them. And they also are putting themselves at profound risk. If we, the fans, have to think about that too much, we become very uncomfortable. And the coaches and players work by an ethos where they essentially have to encourage their players to risk their lives, to risk their lives, to risk their health. Bill Belichick is a great example. He's a great motivator. And one of the anecdotes in the book is about Ted Johnson and how he basically sort of pushed Ted Johnson into playing when he really shouldn't have been playing. But that doesn't make him a bad coach in the NFL. That's part of the Patriot mystique.
Right. What would a Stave Almond, informed consent waiver look like exactly if these guys were signing away knowing exactly what was going to happen to them? Well,
yeah, what I write in the book is that if you really want to say, the basic moral question isn't a lot of the excuses that fans like me use is, well, the players know what they're doing, they're adults, and they get paid lots of money to do this. That's not the question I'm interested in posing in the book. It's why do we consume the violence? But for players, if there was a waiver that every time somebody got drafted, it said something like, I, the undersigned, understand that there are researchers who have definitively proved that this game is 19 times more likely to cause brain trauma illness later in my life, and that there's some researchers even believe that it might shorten my life. And they then had to watch a video of a couple of players like Mike Webster or Junior Seau in the later moments of their lives when they were struggling with dementia. Then I think it would be a real thing they would really have to consider, and their families would have to consider whether it's worth it.
They do it anyway.
They might do it anyway, but the question is, should we be watching? Should we be watching?
I'm going to be one of those ones. I've already been to one of the preseason games, I hate to tell you. So.
That's all right. It's a process. It's all a process.
Stave Almond, as always, thanks for joining us.